morning. It's good to be with you. I usually on Sunday afternoon will open up the next text to at least get a look at it. It's a compulsion of mine, and I don't know why I keep on doing it. It always stresses me out. And it was no different this week, because I opened up from chapter 3 to chapter 4, and what I saw was a repetition of the exact same things that I had just said for the past 2 or 3 weeks. And immediately my creative mind went into overload, trying to figure out, well, what new thing will I say? How can I not say what I have said and say something new while speaking about the exact same things that I just talked about? And I had a moment of panic about how this was going to happen, and then by the grace of God, peace that surpasses understanding came upon my heart, and it was clear in a moment that I was falling into the same trap that this very passage in Proverbs in general warns against, which is trying to find your own way in life. And there's it's repetition here in chapter 4. The whole thing is very much a repetition of what has already been said in the first 3 chapters. And so I began, instead of trying to pick apart what was being said, was asking the question, why is it saying it again? Why the repetition? Why go over the same things again and again, repeating oneself endlessly, over and over and over again? And it occurred to me that repetition is an important way of highlighting to us just how important an issue is. If something's truly important, you talk about it more. Just look out in the world. People have their pet issue, and they find a way to shoehorn it into every single possible conversation, don't they? And it's no different here with God, and with God speaking through Solomon to us about the issue of wisdom, that it's important. And so Solomon wants to talk about it again. And it's all the more important that it repeats itself, because the truth is, and this is a hard thing for me as a person who prepares sermons regularly and remembers the things that I have said before, that the truth about all of us is that our hearts are often very forgetful. We are forgetful people. How many of us have once in our life, or last week, or any number of weeks, listened to a whiz-bang sermon? It's a great message where you were left and you were so encouraged by what was said, and then went out only to fall back into the same very trap that sermon was warning against, or completely losing grip on the encouragement that you received that morning. What was so true to you in a moment was nowhere to be found the next minute. Our hearts are forgetful. Just this very week, I'm not immune to this. We were in small group on Monday morning, and Zach brought up, well, we should talk sometime about what happened in the sermon. Talk about application of the sermon. What are we getting from it? And I was, that's a great idea. Only to have to admit, to my great shame, I couldn't remember what I just preached on yesterday. What did I talk about yesterday? That's how quick it can happen. Our hearts are forgetful. Life's troubles work together with our natural unfaithfulness to produce forgetfulness, especially when it would be most helpful to us. It's at the very moment when I need to be encouraged that I can't find those words that were there a moment ago. And as frustrating it is for us, we need to know that God is not frustrated with us about this. Nothing catches him by surprise, and so he patiently, lovingly reminds us of the truth again and again and again. This is why his word is evergreen. Even if we do read about the way of wisdom and the way of the wicked 5,000 times, it's because God knows in our heart of hearts we need to remember that this is important. And he will graciously remind us as many times as we need and more, because he's good. And so this is about desire and direction. That's the name of the sermon today. And what we're going to talk about is the first two sections of chapter 4, which are largely repetitions of what we have talked about before. Next week we'll deal with something a little bit more new and fresh. So I thought it good to split those things up. But what we're going to see first here is that Solomon engages in the heart of the matter, what's truly important. He says, "Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother." See, what he's saying here is, though we may look at this and see something we've seen before, we need to know that though the world wants something new all the time, they don't want the same old, they want something new and exciting. I fell into this very trap, trying to figure out how I was going to present this same teaching in a new and exciting way. Because that's what the world wants, something novel, something that excites the mind and inspires curiosity and speculation. Paul warned against this. He says, the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they'll accumulate for themselves teachers that suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. Solomon is warning against these things and saying that he is giving the good teaching, good precepts, good principles for life. The world wants compromise. Do not say to the seers, Isaiah says, do not see, and to the prophets, do not prophesy to us what is right. Speak to us smooth things. The way of the world is to try and smooth things over. Get by. Don't ruffle feathers. Make something illusory that we can all like. But Solomon says, no, I want to give you the truth. Be attentive, that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. I'm not speaking to you, my sons, about what makes you feel good about yourself. Because Solomon knows what he is now communicating to us is that what the world wants and what we need are two different things, often. The important things come from the wisdom that comes from God. And we, all of us, need the good stuff, not the other stuff. We need the good stuff. Even if these things are unpalatable or fresh, we need what encourages in us humility. We need what encourages in us holiness. And we need what encourages in us Christ-likeness. That's what we need. The world doesn't want that. Our sinful, unfaithful hearts don't want that. Yet that's what we really need. That's what's good for our soul. And that's why Solomon calls it sound. It's what works, really works. So, what works is also worth sharing. And that is what Solomon is doing here. And through Solomon, God is speaking to us down through the corridors of history so that we might gain, as Solomon did, understanding that will bless us, that will give us the good things that we really need. And in this passage, what stood out to me is that there is a focus here on generational discipleship. It's not just repetition of the same thing, it's repetition through generations and generations of people. Solomon is known as the teacher, and he's a good teacher because he himself had been carefully taught by his own father, David, and by his mother, Bathsheba. We see this in 1 Kings chapter 2. When David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, I am about to go to the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you turn. That the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul. You shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. Do you see? David is distilling all that has happened in the course of his life and attempting now to pass it on to his son, Solomon. Out of all that's happened to me, Solomon, I want you to walk in this one true thing, to know the Lord and to follow him. And to us, what we are being shown here is the importance of godly parenting. That a parent's most important ministry is to raise up their children in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, as Paul talked about in Ephesians chapter 6. That if we truly love our children, this is what we will do. We will raise them up as David did to Solomon. Charles Bridges, one great English theologian, said training discipline and not foolish indulgence is the truest evidence of our affection to our tender and beloved ones. This is a much, much kinder way of saying spare the rod, spoil the child, right? But the truth remains that if we love our children, we will shape them into who God wants them to be. True discipleship is truly loving. And what we see presented here is this wonderful, affectionate, relational instruction. It's not chalkboard and rulers tapping on the chalkboard instruction. It's not cold and academic. It's deeply relational, after the pattern of God. When God taught his people Israel, how did he teach them? He brought them out of Egypt by a mighty hand and fed them in the desert. And then he instructed them in how they ought to go. When Christ came to instruct us, how did he do it? He fed the 5,000 upon the Sea of Galilee with his words, and then he gave them bread. He instructs us on the basis of relationship with us, and so we ought to do the same with future generations. It's important that we, all of us in this room, give thought to future generations, how we might pass on what we have. And that means that if we're wise, we're going to consider what has come on before, as Solomon does here. He says, when I was a child, my father taught me and said to me. This is a picture of tradition. Tradition is something that is oft overlooked in its importance, but it's fundamental to our civilization. Human culture does not exist, without tradition. If we didn't have some kind of way of passing on what came before, it would be up to each successive generation to basically redo society from the ground up. This would be highly destructive. And so we all rely on tradition, whether we realize it or not. And it's important for us to learn from others, the collective influence and insight of all of humanity. This involves for us a certain measure of risk. When we learn from those who are living right now, there's a necessary measure of risk because they're still living. They're still walking the path, and so there's always the chance that they might not make it to the end. They might let us down. They might go down a way that we can't follow. They might fail morally, ethically. Any number of things might happen to where the influence that they once wielded would now become a kind of grief and a wound on us. Sadly, this has led many to abandon seeking the truth from the past at all. We don't care about learning from others. All we have to rely on is our own insight, our instinct, our intellectual capacity, apart from any influences. This is the way of the world today that I spoke about last week, this radical expressive individualism where the highest form of good is that I, me, the royal me, would become the most me I can be, to find my true self and to express it into the world. Nobody else can tell me what I need to be. I must discover it. and produce it. But it would be an error for us not to listen to others, for us to learn from them. It just means that we have to be a little more careful about who we listen to and how we assess what they are saying. We need a higher standard, which is the Scripture, by which to judge what God has passed down to us, what has been tested throughout the generations. And so, because God has been at work through the course of human history, we have a chorus, a cloud of witnesses, if you will, to coin a phrase from whoever it was that wrote Hebrews, to learn from, to test ourselves against. And that is tradition. Now, we're all here on a Sunday morning in a Baptist church. Baptists have a troubled relationship with tradition. We care very deeply about certain traditions that we shouldn't care about, and we dismiss many traditions that we might learn something from. Because when we look at church tradition, the Baptist naturally begins to think, well, this smacks of popishness. That I don't want to get, whatever I do, the most important thing is that I don't look anything like a Roman Catholic. It's like the height of Baptistness to not be Roman Catholic. And there are good reasons for this, but this is to miss out on 2,000 years of the church's history that God has given us to grow and to learn and to be established and encouraged by. That rather we tend towards this practice of eschewing all other influences. It's me alone with my Bible. And so we have in effect created another Trinity, that it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Bible rather than the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit who works in and through the church together. And we become very zealous, yes, but we ignore what God has given us as a gift. Ray Ortland, a pastor, shared this perspective on church history, which was pretty interesting to me. He said, in the 2,000-year history of the church, we can establish that there have been about 60 generations of 33 years apiece. If you consider a generation to be 33 years, there have been only 60 in the entire history of the church. And that these 60 generations, what they have produced are a few things that we often take for granted. Now, in the 12th generation, a man named Augustine encouraged the church by reminding us that we were made for God and we will never feel quite right unless we are living in that reality. In the 32nd generation, Anselm taught us that it's only once we come to God that we can truly see the burden of our sin. Only in light of the cross can we see just how heavy it was, the burden of sin that we were carrying. Martin Luther, in the 45th generation, taught us that justification is by faith alone, that God, the work that he does, is making bad people good, not bad people making themselves good. And in the 53rd, we had Jonathan Edwards teaching us that God, what he does in our hearts is produce a new affection, a new heart, a living heart, and a new affection for God and his things of God. These are all things that we have been contributed to the church, that God has blessed us to be encouraged by, and yet we ourselves are standing on the shoulders of these giants, and often we ignore them, where we take for granted these things that are fundamental, and we shouldn't, just because we live in the presence. All this to say, read Old Dead Guys. They're great because they have contributed to this wonderful shared tradition that leads us to this one beautiful truth, that Jesus Christ will not let us down. For 2,000 years, people have been putting their trust in him, and they were not let down, and he does not let us down if we follow after him in faith. And so Solomon, with all the love in his heart for his son, says, "My father said to me, let your heart hold fast to my words. Keep my commandments and live." This is what David taught him. And it was full of passion. You can hear it in the tone. Don't. Or let your heart hold fast. Don't forget them. Keep them close. And it can be like this when we understand something is truly important. The way we talk about it changes. The passion in our voice changes a little bit. Because when it's something's truly important and someone we get the sense isn't quite getting it, our choices, our response isn't like, well, I guess it's really not that important. No, rather we all the more want to make them understand, to help them understand, to do all that we can so they might come to see. And this is a perfect illustration is when we share the gospel. When we share the gospel, are we sharing the cold and academic information that man was in a state of sin from the moment that Adam and Eve fell in the garden, and then they languished in sin and misery until at the proper time Jesus Christ came into the world, the incarnate God, and he lived a perfect obedient life to God and died upon the cross so that all who believe in him might not perish but receive everlasting life. Who wants to come to the altar? Would you come? I wouldn't. No. But we experience the salvation of Jesus Christ, that we have been forgiven of our sin. That doesn't make me want to share some cold, dead words. I want to be all the more emphatic about it, so that this person will not just hear the words, but also hear the importance in the way that I speak about it. That it's an urgent message. Solomon is presenting here that good parents, all good parents, want their children to know what's truly important in life. They sit down with their children, they talk with them, they try and pass on those things which they consider to be most important. The really, really true things. I don't have time to say all the things I might want to say, but I want to tell you the really important ones. What we see here that the difference between good parents and wise parents is that wise parents know that the most important thing, the thing above all those other things that they can give to their children, is to pursue God's wisdom. And what could be more important than that? So Solomon pleads with his sons, as David pleaded with Solomon, get wisdom. He says it over and over again. Get wisdom. Get insight. Do not forget. Do not turn away. Do not forsake her. Prize her. Embrace her. This isn't some theological treatise. This is a father pleading with his son. If you hear nothing else, son, get this. Go out and find it. Why? It's worth wanting. It's worth searching for. It's worth giving everything up for. We've talked about this. We talked about it last week. I don't want to belabor that point. This is a father talking to his son essentially about courting a wife. This is a language. A father wants his son to grow up and get a good woman. And for Solomon, the best woman is Lady Wisdom. Lady Wisdom. Go after her, son, and get her. Whatever it costs. Whatever it costs you, the dowry is worth it. Because she brings such benefit. She will bring to you life, son. A full life. Not just long life that I'll live forever, but that I will have a life that matters. That's full of security. Full of assurance, full of joy, full of meaning and purpose. Because it's life that comes from the author of life. Get wisdom, son. Get insight. Don't turn away. Don't forsake her. Love her. Because she will provide for you security. Love her and she will guard you. Don't forsake her and she will keep you. We've talked about this. That wisdom preserves us in our lives. And so when we pursue wisdom and we take hold of her and we hold tight and hold fast to her, what we receive is freedom from fearfulness. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If I fear God, then what need do I have to fear anything else? And so what she offers to the one who takes hold of her is a freedom from fearfulness. Son, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. You're going to get tired of hearing him say, get wisdom, because he wants you to get wisdom. And whatever you get insight. Prize her highly and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place a head of graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. There's nothing in here new, but everything in here is needful. What it accumulates to is this: that wisdom is a supreme thing, a thing that stands above all others. That whatever price is demanded by wisdom, and the price is everything we have, is worth it. She's more valuable than gold, chapter 3 told us, and silver, more precious than gemstones. So she ought to be the first thing, placed in the first place in our hearts and in our lives. And wise parents pass on this time-tested truth from generation to generation. Get wisdom. Go after it. Whatever it costs, get insight. Don't forget it. Don't turn away from it. Embrace it. Prize it. With everything you have, in the face of any obstacle, and don't stop. If we chase after wisdom and then we take hold of her and prize her, it may lead to our being hated by the world. It says here that she will honor you if you embrace her. This is speaking of a reputation. It will give us a good reputation. Yet we know that Christians don't always have the luxury of having a good reputation in the world. But I would say this: a good reputation can look something like the fact that I'm hated by unbelievers because I look like Jesus Christ. I would take that. If I'm going to be hated, what better thing to be hated for than Jesus? And so, the most important thing, church, that we can ever pass on to our children, and I'm saying this to everyone in this room, because whether we have children in the flesh or children in the faith, the most important thing that we can ever pass on is to know the living God through faith in Jesus Christ and to follow his ways. If you pass nothing else on in your life, but you pass on that, you have passed on everything that is needful. So, the first instruction in here is to give the proper desire. The next is going to be giving the proper direction, remembering the way. It's one thing, right, that we have the proper principles, the proper precepts and commands and ways that we know are wise and good. It's entirely another thing to be prepared to walk in those things. There's things we know, and then we got to go out, and that rubber has got to hit that road and still roll. And so as disciplers, we have to prepare our children to keep hold of those precious things as they walk in the way of wisdom. And here, again, we see, hear my son, and accept my words, that the years of your life may be many. This is an expression of fatherly love. Parents, all parents want their children to have a good life, a long life, a successful life. And good parents and wise parents know that a good, long, successful life is going to have its ups and downs. When we first become Christians, we have a great deal of zeal. We're excited about what we have discovered. And our zeal drives us for a time, but youthful zeal, you know, doesn't last forever. Things come up. Rocky ground, trials, tribulations compete to make us lose sight of our faith. We saw this in the seed that was scattered on the rocky soil. It has no root. It endures for a while, and then tribulation or persecution arises, and then they fall away. We have in us the temptation of fleeting convictions, that we might find ourselves becoming fair weather followers of Jesus, that they remembered, as the psalmist says, that God was their rock, the most high God, their Redeemer, but they flattered him with their mouths and lied to him with their tongues. That we followed after him at the time that seemed right to us, but it wasn't really a true following. That we would abandon the law as Rehoboam did, that when things are going well, we just have a tendency to forget God. Oh, great, that was awesome at that time, but I'm good right now. That we might come, as the Galatians did, to believe that we might finish this race on our own, without God's help. That we might, what begun by the Spirit, finish by works. And ultimately then, we might stumble because we are indulging our own sinfulness. That we wouldn't put aside those things as we should have. And all this reminds us that wise living isn't just a thing that happens. I don't just get wisdom and then all of a sudden all is gravy. It takes hard work. It takes hard work to walk wisely, to guard the treasure that we have found. And if Proverbs has taught us anything over and over and over again, it's taught us this fundamental truth that we have a choice to make between two ways: the way of life, the way of death, the way of wickedness, the way of righteousness, the way of wisdom, the way of folly. Yet, in our sin,